Hey, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. This is Minutes with God, Street Interviews. God bless.
First question, do you think God and government should be separate?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because it's tricky, but people have, I guess, different beliefs in what their religion entails and whatnot, and I don't think the government, I guess that government would kind of be stepping over religion and maybe like freedom of speech in that sense.
Well, people have different votes, but they still have community.
Wait, what do you mean?
Some people are Republicans, some people are Democrats, but they still have this thing called community.
Yes.
So should it be separate? And is there a good reason why it should be separate?
I think, okay, now you're getting me.
Tag team, tag her.
What do you think?
I think religion is more of like an emotional, spiritual connection with how you interact with the world around you, whereas a government is more of an organizational tool to kind of make sure the mechanics of your community works well. So I feel like they should be separate because they're intertwined, but they're not necessarily parallel for me.
Okay, I respect your answer. That was a good college intellectual answer. All right, so let me ask you this question. We're going to use history a little bit. In 1776, the laws of nature and of nature's God is what we wrote on the Declaration of Independence. Our founding fathers who created this great government system, they endorsed God right then and there. What do you think about that?
You go first. Yeah.
I think just religion was much more institutionalized back then. I think it was you didn't have a variance in beliefs. It was kind of passed down through generations. Like, this is what you believe. You weren't really encouraged to seek out other ways to express your spiritualism. So that way.
Was it a formula that works, though? A formula that worked?
I feel like back then things were more simplistic, and I think there were a lot more heavily ingrained, what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily traditions, but expectations. So you were less likely to stray from outside of that. So I do think it worked back then, but I can't really speak for nowadays. So.
Do you think they really had a heartfelt compassion towards what the Bible was speaking, or a heartfelt experience that really changed their intellectual thinking for the country?
I think it was more obligational back then because you weren't.
So it was obligational to be a Christian back then than anything else?
Yeah, and I think there were repercussions if you didn't. Obviously in history I can't give dates, but people who strayed out beyond that, were witches. They were all these other things, and you weren't really allowed to branch out. Does that kind of make sense? For fear of persecution.
Okay, so I hear you. And so they continue to endorse God by putting, we live in a very liberal country type of thing. We're kind of doing whatever we want to do. And we kind of go against those boundaries now because everybody has a right to believe in what they want to believe in. Do you think the formula, now that we're taking the formula out of the country, the laws of nature and of nature's God, do you think that's becoming a disaster?
I don't know if we can attribute it to that specifically, though. I think there's so many other aspects that influence how we act as people and influence our government now. We have politics, we have emotions. It's not that simplistic nowadays.
Here's a big question. You guys believers? She's like, I thought those were the big questions. You guys believers?
No, I'm not. Okay. I'm more, I guess, spiritual. Like, I believe in energy, and what you put out is kind of what you get back. That kind of.
So do you think that God and science complement each other?
I grew up Catholic, but I can't say 100% sure I believe in God. Like, maybe there's something bigger out there, but I think science is completely different, and like, I do agree with science and, different aspects and stuff, but I question the higher source, I guess, when it comes to that.
I believe the two are separate. I believe that people just throughout history, even with just throughout history, people want to attach onto a deity. We want to believe there is a higher power to kind of influence us to act properly and to make good decisions. But at the end of the day, I don't personally believe there is a deity. I believe in karma. I believe in being a good human being. And I think some people need a deity to act that way.
So do you think this is evidence of God existing, everything around us? What about your eyes, or what about your eyes? Do you think that's evidence of a God?
I don't believe so.
See, that's where it gets tricky. That's where I'm not 100% sure, because it's like if I think about it in my brain, I'm like, well, how did the universe even create itself? So how did the first thing ever create itself?
Russian roulette.
Listen, so that's where it kind of gets tricky. But I don't know.
Does that concern you though? Like to live on a gamble?
What's our
What I mean,
I mean, if there's a life after death, wouldn't you want to know? Like, cause I get it. Like we can have a belief system that there is not a God, but I think that belief system is dangerous. And because I can have a belief system that gravity doesn't exist, and when I jump off of that building, there's going to be a reality that gravity does exist, no matter if I contradicted it. So our belief can be very dangerous to us. If we believe that there isn't a God, and then we die, and then we finally meet God, we're really going to be stuck. It's a Russian roulette thing.
but if I grew up Catholic, and if that's the case, and you meet God, and
Well, if I grew up,
forgiving and whatnot, so
He's all forgiving on what conditions?
I mean, I guess if you believe, but
But why do we need a God? Why do we need a deity to act properly so that in the afterlife we'll be okay? Like, why don't we just be?
Well, why do you need mom to give you birth?
Well, that's different. That's biological.
Well, let me tell you why we need God. We need God because we need life, and that's why we need God. Is because we need life, and without God there is no life. And so God comes and shares that with him, that he's the gatekeeper of life. And in the Bible I read, he says he's the way, the truth, and life. And apart from him, we don't have life. So what do you guys think about this conversation? What do you guys think about it?
Honestly, I like having conversations like this. So it's good views. It opens up your perspective. So
We're allowed to live on a planet and not agree with everybody. That's totally fine. That's what makes America America.
There's a quote out there. Well, there's not even a quote. There's a Bible verse out there that says that the fool says there is no God. And I think about that, and that offends a lot of people. Why do you think that offends people?
Well, I mean, people see it as insulting, but it's subjective. Someone can think you're a fool for believing in God, and someone might think you're a fool for not. I mean, if you're happy with yourself and you're spiritually content, why does what they think matters?
If there was a stop sign and I was traveling about a good 50 miles an hour and somebody said, you're going to be a fool if you pass that and don't even stop, and I'm like, no, I'm offended by you telling me that I'm going to be a fool. So I ram it up an extra 10, an extra 15, and then there's kids crossing and an accident happens. It's catastrophic. You know what I mean? And so I think we treat God like that. No, that's foolish to think that way, because God doesn't exist and it offends me, but one day we might have to get a fair handshake from him.
Gotta be good people, I guess.
Well, we got to put our hope in God, hope in the Bible, hope in Jesus Christ. All right, here, I'm going to give you